I am a vessel of memory, a palace of light and power. My body is made of the cool, gray stone of Tuscany, the Pietra Serena, and my heart is filled with the golden visions of the Renaissance. I stretch along the bank of the Arno River, a long, stately corridor connecting the fierce civic heart of Florence, the Piazza della Signoria, to the ever-flowing artery of the river. My windows are eyes that have watched this city for nearly 500 years. They have seen grand ducal processions and humble market stalls, the devastating fury of a flood and the quiet heroism of its aftermath, the shadow of war and the bright, hopeful faces of millions of pilgrims who come to me not for salvation, but for beauty. I am the Uffizi Gallery, but I was not born as a gallery. I was born of bureaucracy, ambition, and the will of a single, powerful man. My story begins in the mind of Cosimo I de' Medici, the first Grand Duke of Tuscany. He was a man who understood power, not just the overt power of soldiers and fortresses, but the more subtle, pervasive power of order and administration. In the mid-16th century, he ruled a newly consolidated state from the formidable Palazzo Vecchio, but the machinery of his government was scattered across the city in various buildings. He envisioned a new kind of structure, a single magnificent edifice that would house all the essential administrative and judicial offices, the ufficii, of the Florentine state. It was to be a monument to Medici efficiency and centralized control. He entrusted this grand vision to his court architect and confidant, Giorgio Vasari, a man who was not only an architect, but also a painter and, most famously, the great chronicler of the lives of the artists. One Vasari conceived of a brilliant and revolutionary design. He proposed a long U-shaped building with two parallel wings running down to the Arno, connected by a shorter wing whose grand open loggia would perfectly frame the view of the river and the sky. 2. It was a piece of urban theater designed to create a majestic, orderly public space out of a dense and chaotic medieval neighborhood. The construction, which began in 1560, was a monumental undertaking. Old houses were demolished, new foundations were laid, and slowly my form began to rise. I was designed to be imposing yet elegant. Vasari used the serene gray sandstone for the columns and architectural details, contrasting with the white plaster of the walls, creating a rhythm of cool classical harmony. The ground floor was a deep shaded loggia supported by powerful Doric columns, a space for citizens to conduct business. The upper floors, where the real work of government would take place, were to be the offices. My very name spoke of this purpose, Galleria degli Uffizi, the Gallery of the Offices. I was built for magistrates, notaries, and clerks. My purpose was paper, ink, and the meticulous administration of a state. Art was not part of my original conception. But dynasties, like all mortal things, eventually fade. By the early 18th century, the Medici family line was facing extinction 5. The last male ruler, Gian Gastone de' Medici, died in 1737 without an heir. 6. The rule of Tuscany passed to the Austrian house of Lorraine 7. The great question that hung over Florence was what would become of the Medici's unparalleled artistic legacy, the vast collection that had been accumulated over 300 years, the very collection that had come to define my existence. By the laws of inheritance, it could have been dispersed, sold off to the great courts of Europe, scattered to the winds. Florence and I could have been stripped of our treasures. That this did not happen is due to the foresight and immense civic pride of one extraordinary woman, Anna Maria Luisa de' Medici, the last of the Medici bloodline. 8. She was the sister of Gian Gastone and the inheritor of the family's vast personal property. In 1737, she signed a document of monumental importance, the Patto di Famiglia, or Family Pact. In this pact, she bequeathed the entire artistic patrimony of the Medici, Every painting, every statue, every jewel, the contents of my galleries and the Pitti Palace, to the new Lorrainer Grand Dukes and their successors. But she did so with one crucial, legally binding condition. The collection could never be removed from Florence. It was to remain in the city forever, for the benefit of the public of all nations. This was an act of incredible vision. Anna Maria Luisa understood that the Medici collection did not just belong to her family. It belonged to Florence and to the world. She ensured that the art that the Medici had commissioned and collected would forever remain in the city that had inspired it. She was my savior. With the stroke of a pen, she transformed me from a private ducal possession into a universal public treasure. My doors were now officially open to the world, my purpose defined for all time. Since that day, my life has been a long, continuous dialogue with the art that I hold and the visitors who come to see it. I am the keeper of souls, the guardian of masterpieces. My corridors tell the story of the Florentine Renaissance, from its stern, pious beginnings to its glorious humanistic peak. I have watched for centuries as these panels of wood and canvases have spoken to generations of viewers. I remember the awe inspired by the great maestas that greet visitors in my first rooms. Here, the monumental enthroned Madonnas of Cimabue and Duccio, with their formal Byzantine elegance and their backgrounds of pure gold, flank the work that changed everything, Giotto's Ognissanti Madonna. In Giotto's work, painted around 1310, one can feel a new gravity, a new humanity. His Madonna is not a flat, divine symbol. She is a solid, queenly mother. She has weight, she occupies space, and her throne is rendered with a new, convincing sense of perspective. It is here, in the dialogue between these three great altarpieces, that the story of the Renaissance truly begins. My halls chart the course of the 15th century, the Florentine Quattrocento. I house the delicate, courtly beauty of Gentile da Fabriano's Adoration of the Magi, a masterpiece of the international Gothic style, glittering with gold leaf and intricate detail. But I also hold the works that announce the arrival of the New Age. I have witnessed the experiments with perspective by Paolo Uccello in his Battle of San Romano, and the serene, light-filled piety of Fra Angelico's altarpieces. I am home to the tender, graceful Madonnas of Filippo Lippi, whose beautiful, worldly figures often scandalized the more conservative citizens of his time. But there is one room, a sanctuary within my walls, that draws the greatest number of pilgrims. It is the room that holds the soul of the Lawrencean Golden Age, the room of Sandro Botticelli. I have lived with his two most famous creations for centuries, and their mysterious, lyrical beauty has never faded. His Primavera, spring, is not a simple depiction of a season. It is a complex Neoplatonic allegory, a dream of classical mythology, philosophy, and poetry. 10, Venus presides over a sacred grove, while the three Graces dance. Flora scatters flowers, and Mercury dispels the clouds. 11. It is a painting of immense intellectual sophistication and breathtaking linear grace. Beside it hangs its even more famous sibling, The Birth of Venus. Here, Venus arrives on the shore, born of the sea foam, blown by the winds Zephyrus and Aura, and ready to be clothed by one of the hours. She is a figure of impossible, almost otherworldly beauty, a symbol of divine love and the birth of beauty into the world. These paintings are not just artworks, they are incantations. To stand in this room is to be transported back to the rarefied philosophical court of Lorenzo the Magnificent. They are the heart of my collection, the very essence of the Florentine Renaissance's quest to synthesize the classical and the Christian, the intellectual and the beautiful. My collection holds the evidence of the High Renaissance's towering intellects. I am home to the genius of Leonardo da Vinci, the Florentine boy whose restless curiosity knew no bounds. His early enunciation shows his fascination with the natural world in the meticulous rendering of the plants in the garden and the delicate feathers of the angel's wings. 12. His unfinished Adoration of the Magi is a revolutionary swirl of human emotion and psychological intensity. a vortex of figures all reacting to the central mystery of the divine child. It is a glimpse into a mind that was never satisfied with simple representation, but always sought to understand the deeper currents of nature and the human soul. I also hold the only finished panel painting by the great Michelangelo, the Doni Tondo. It is a work of breathtaking power and originality. The Holy Family is depicted in a complex, twisting, serpentine pose, their bodies possessing the muscular, sculptural quality of his marble statues. The vibrant, almost shocking colors and the enigmatic nude figures in the background were a radical departure from the harmony of his contemporaries. It is a challenging, intellectual, and deeply powerful work, a testament to a genius who always forged his own path. My walls also tell the story of what happened when the center of the art world moved from Florence to Rome and Venice. I house the serene Madonnas of Raphael, including his famous Madonna of the Goldfinch, a work of perfect harmonious balance and tender human emotion. 13. And I am home to the glories of the Venetian school, most famously Titian's Venus of Urbino. This magnificent, sensual depiction of a reclining nude is a world away from the cool, mythological Venus of Titian's Venus is a real, flesh-and-blood woman, her gaze direct and inviting, a celebration of earthly love and beauty, rendered with a masterful command of color and texture. 14 later, I would come to house the dramatic, revolutionary power of Caravaggio, whose paintings of Bacchus and the severed head of Medusa brought a new, visceral, and often terrifying realism to art. My long life on the banks of the Arno has not been without its own dramas and traumas. I have been a silent witness to the city's fortunes, and I have shared in its moments of crisis. For centuries, my greatest fear was my lifelong neighbor, the Arno itself. The river that flows so peacefully past my windows is capable of immense destructive power. The most terrible demonstration of this came in November 1966. After days of relentless rain, the Arno burst its banks, and a devastating wave of water, mud, and oil surged through the city. I felt the water rise in my lower levels, in my storage rooms. The city was submerged. The damage was catastrophic. Priceless artworks throughout Florence were destroyed or severely damaged. Millions of books in the National Library, just downstream from me, were soaked in mud. In the aftermath, a remarkable thing happened. From all over Italy and the world, thousands of young people, who would become known as the Angeli del Fango, the Mud Angels, descended on the City 15. They worked tirelessly in the cold and the filth, forming human chains to carry artworks to safety, and painstakingly cleaning mud from the pages of ancient manuscripts. It was a global act of solidarity, a recognition that my contents and the heritage of Florence belonged to everyone. My halls watched as the singular genius of Leonardo and the restless power of Michelangelo gave way to a brief, perfect moment of harmony. This harmony had a name: Raphael. Though born in Urbino and destined for greatness in Rome, Raphael Sanzio spent a crucial period from 1504 to 1508 here in Florence. He came to learn to absorb the lessons of the great master. In my rooms, you can feel him studying the smoky, mysterious sfumato of Leonardo and the clear compositional purity of Perugino, and synthesizing them into something uniquely his own. As the Medici dynasty solidified its power, transforming from citizen rulers to hereditary grand dukes, my collections began to reflect their increasingly international and opulent tastes. My identity, once purely Florentine, began to expand. A new wing was built on my western side to house the growing collection, and my corridors began to welcome the rich, sensual art of a great rival city, Venice. The Venetian rooms are a world away from the intellectual lines of Florence. Here, color, texture, and light reign supreme. The undisputed master is Titian. His Venus of Urbino became one of my most famous and talked about residents. She is a world away from Botticelli's cool, mythological goddess. Titian's Venus is a warm, living, breathing woman of flesh and blood, reclining on the rumpled sheets of a bed in a sumptuous Venetian palazzo. Her gaze is direct, confident, and utterly captivating. It is a painting that celebrates the beauty of the human body and the richness of the material world. The lustrous pearls, the deep red of the velvet, the golden fur of the small dog sleeping at her feet. It is a symphony of color and texture, a masterpiece of Venetian sensuality. Beside her hang other glories of the Venetian school. There are the grand, dramatic compositions of Paolo Veronese, filled with opulent fabrics and theatrical crowds, and the mystical, turbulent works of Tintoretto, whose canvases seem to be charged with a restless spiritual energy, his figures painted with quick, almost feverish brushstrokes. To walk from my Florentine rooms into my Venetian ones is to experience the two great competing souls of Italian Renaissance art. The Florentine emphasis on drawing, form, and intellectual structure, disegno, and the Venetian devotion to color, light, and emotion, colore. Today, in the summer of 2025, I am once again in the midst of a great transformation. The Nuovi Uffizi project, a massive, decades-long undertaking, is nearing completion. This project is giving my old body new lungs and new arteries. The goal is to modernize my facilities while respecting my historic integrity. New exhibition spaces are being opened in my ground floor and basement levels, effectively doubling the amount of art that can be displayed. My lighting, climate control, and security systems are being brought into the 21st century. The visitor experience is being rethought, creating new routes and better facilities to welcome the millions who come to see me each year. I am being prepared for the next chapter of my long life. And so my story continues. I have stood on the banks of the Arno for nearly half a millennium. I was conceived in power, born of bureaucracy, and came of age as a palace of beauty. I have been the private treasure of a great dynasty and the public heritage of the entire world. I have witnessed the creation of breathtaking genius and the senseless violence of its destruction. I have survived the fury of nature and the malice of men. Through it all, I have held fast to the promise made by my Savior, Anna Maria Luisa de' Medici, to keep these treasures safe in Florence, for the benefit of all people. My daily life is a quiet rhythm. The hush of the morning gives way to the murmur of 1,000 languages as my doors open. I watch as faces from every corner of the globe light up in recognition before a familiar masterpiece. I feel the collective intake of breath in the Botticelli rooms. I am a silent host to countless personal moments of discovery and wonder. I am not a static warehouse of the past. I am a living institution, a bridge across time, a place where a dialogue between a 15th century vision and a 21st century heart is happening at every moment. I am the Uffizi. My story is the story of Florence. My doors are open, my souls are waiting. Come and see what a city, a family, and a group of artists dreamed into being.